And then this upcoming weekend, that's when we could see accumulating snowfall Friday night, Saturday, even on Sunday, some rain, snow possible with highs in the mid-30s this weekend into early next week.
Through 4 p.m. Oh, we've got plenty that we have lined up for you today. So let's talk about some of the things that we have lined up. The 3 words that we've uttered over and over again, especially since the month of August around here. That's Operation Midway Blitz. The Trump administration may have its sights more focused right now on other parts of the country. We've seen raids going on in North Carolina. We're hearing that there may be some happening in New Orleans very soon. But of course, during the height of the Chicago crackdown, we are still hearing news stories from that time period. And today, I'm going to be talking to a housing organizer with Southside Together about what comes next for residents of an apartment building that was raided by federal agents who have now unionized. We were just kind of speaking in the newsroom about, have you ever heard of residents of an apartment building unionizing before? It's the first I've heard of it, but maybe it's more common than we know. So we're going to speak with this organizer about how they've joined together and what comes next. What are they looking forward from this particular union? What are they going to be doing? Of course, this is from the incident that took place on South Shore. There were videos that the Trump administration put out where there were helicopters that came down, and there were agents that went in on the ground, agents that came from above, and they went in, kicked in doors, lots of people that were let out in the middle of the night. And so there was so much made of that. And in fact, they posted those videos repeatedly online to talk about ramping up their efforts. And of course, at this point in time with Operation Midway Blitz, I believe there are about 4,000 arrests that the Trump administration now takes credit for during the operation. But of course, it's the things that may have happened in between. Who were the people that were not in the country illegally that may have been arrested or detained during that time? And again, what's going to happen with this apartment complex moving forward? Who goes in and replaces or repairs all of the doors of people who are in the country legally, who are U.S. citizens, whose night and lives were disrupted in such a way? What happens next? We're going to talk with that organizer about what they're doing. We're going to also be speaking. We just got this on board. We're going to speak with the organizers of a podcast called the Prosecutors Podcast. If you recall, over the last 48 hours here, one of our big stories has been an update to the Slender Man case. It was huge several years ago, I believe 2014, when there were 2 young girls who were accused of stabbing and convicted of stabbing one of their classmates. That young woman did survive, but of course, one of the young women was sentenced to 40 years in prison. And here we are. They were 12 years old at the time. She is 23 now. And in September, again, in 2014, she's sentenced to 40 years in prison. So here we are now. She's 23 years old, and in September, she her sentence came up for a possible change. It was reevaluated. It was granted every 6 months that it would be reevaluated. And so here we are in September of this year when she was able to be moved to a group home, and has been in that group home since September and got out already. And so she was found in this area. She was in Wisconsin, I believe, and made it here. Traveled on a Greyhound bus, made it here with a man. And so now there's the whole conversation of, okay, well, they were in court today, waived their extradition. What happens next, even in that particular case that garnered so much attention? The Prosecutors Podcast has been following it. They do a lot of true crime on that podcast. And so we're going to talk about where that case goes, whether now that she's waived extradition, does she go back to the group home? that she just got out of? Does she go back to a hospital or a prison? Are there upgraded charges? There's many different things to consider where that is concerned. So those are a couple of the more in-depth conversations that we have planned. But here's another one. 'Tis the season, of course, for figuring out what gift fits each person on your list. For years, a popular option for those people who are maybe the hard to buy for ones that are on your list has been getting a personalized greeting from maybe a big name sent to them, or a cameo. But then the market got a little complicated. It got a little crowded, maybe even deceptive, and Cameo filed an intellectual property lawsuit against OpenAI. Steven Galanis, Cameo CEO and co-founder, is joining me now to talk a little bit more about what's been going on with this case. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's just first start off with when and how Cameo came to be right here in Chicago.
Yeah, we had the idea for Cameo at the last place you ever think you're going to have your big idea, leaving my grandmother's funeral on October 5th, 2017.
Wow.
The idea was that the selfie was the new autograph. We were entering into the Instagram age, and instead of having memorabilia on your office wall, what people really wanted was things to put on their Facebook or Instagram wall posts. And we were thinking a lot about this idea of the selfie being the new autograph. And obviously, you can't get a selfie with someone unless you're with them. But a personalized video message ended up being exactly the thing that you could share. And the cool thing about it is we always say every single Cameo becomes a commercial for the next one. So
yeah.
It's a great way to share digital love or joy with people.
Yeah, and it blew up. So talk about how the business grew over time.
Yeah, we built this business brick by brick, but over the years, onboarded, a ton of very notable celebrities, especially in Chicago. So Dennis Rodman was one of our really early users. Brett Favre, for the Packer fans out there, to this day is still one of the top athletes ever. But, when you think about the Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, all the legends on the platform, in addition to the reality stars, the Real Housewives of New York, or anyone from the Bravo universe, iconic musicians, actors, you name it, we got it.
How did you go about getting those folks involved?
Yeah, it started with a pretty compelling value prop. When we started Cameo, there really wasn't much monetization for people on the internet. And we started to see a pattern where the internet was helping to create people that were, in effect, more famous than rich. My co-founder, Devin, was one of these people who had blown up on the social network Vine, now defunct, was kind of a precursor to TikTok. Devin had over 1 billion loops on Vine and never made any money from the platform. So there were a lot of people like Devin that were out there. Similarly, there had been a documentary that ESPN did called Broke, and it talked about how 85% of NFL players go broke 5 years after playing their last game. This was a problem that we thought a lot about, and what we really wanted to do was to find a way for talent to get paid to become more beloved, to get paid to become more famous. And at that time, the only thing that they could make money doing were brand deals. So, putting a product out there and telling people to go buy it, which ultimately you can only do so much of it before you're not seen as authentic. And, we really were early at finding, monetization, direct fan monetization, which broadly now people call the creator economy.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So I read that you all tried to resolve some of your issues with OpenAI out of court, but let's talk about when OpenAI first became an issue and what it was like before there was a lawsuit.
Sure. So I was hiking in Yellowstone National Park on September 30th. So I had no phone service for most of the day. I come out of the park and my phone was just blowing up with text messages and phone calls, because OpenAI CEO Sam Altman, in his keynote for Sora 2, their new text-to-video based app, rolled out a core feature called Cameo. And effectively, every individual video on Sora is called a cameo. So the way that you guys should be thinking about it, a cameo is to Sora what a tweet is to X or a reel is to Instagram. It's every individual unit of video. Additionally, they attracted a bunch of high-profile celebs, including people that either have been on Cameo in the past or are currently on Cameo to market it. And that feature was called a Cameo, where you could take somebody like Jake Paul or Mark Cuban or Snoop Dogg and actually use AI to have them, be the star of the video. So you could say, I want Mark Cuban to fight Snoop Dogg on the moon, and it would make a video like that. This obviously problematic because we have the federal trademark for the word Cameo for this exact thing. Downloadable videos featuring athletes, actors, celebrities that are made on an app or mobile application. We came to them kind of immediately after we figured out what was going on with this and gave them a cease and desist, which they ignored despite us having an incontestable trademark in multiple classes for the word in this specific use case. Their response was, well, nobody can own the word Cameo because it's just part of the English language and we're using it as a descriptive. When they didn't change it, we filed a TRO, which is called a temporary restraining order, which is a really extraordinary thing to get granted because that is the judge looking at the case and saying, this is so egregious that ultimately, we're going to order the other company to go and cease using it ASAP to not cause irreparable harm to the other company. In our case, we sell 30% of all of the videos on Cameo between Thanksgiving and Christmas. So it really was imperative that this order came out. We're still waiting for OpenAI to comply with it. The order got ordered late Friday night. And as of now, when you go into the Sora app, they're still infringing on our trademark.
Okay, so how long has this been going on?
Sora launched the Cameo feature on September 30th.
Wow. All right. So plenty of time for it to be taken down or for some type of resolution to be reached. Do you feel like, I asked you about the growth of your business first before launching into this because you're no small business, but do you feel like this is a David and Goliath type of situation at this point?
Like, Anita, we have 62 employees at the company. We're going up against a $500 billion behemoth with thousands and thousands of employees. At the heart of this matter, we've spent hundreds of millions of dollars building an iconic brand around the word Cameo. It's what we're known for. It's my life's work. It's this team's life work here. When, you watch The Simpsons and they talk about getting a cameo, or Saturday Night Live or The Tonight Show, people know what they're talking about and know where they came from because of all the hard work that our teams put into building this brand in a very meticulous way over almost a decade. They could have chosen literally a million different names to go do it that weren't infringing on our copyright. But, in my opinion, they picked it because of the brand that we built on it. And they looked at us and felt like there was no way that we'd be able to compete, in a big lawsuit with them.
Yeah. What do you think it says that they haven't responded thus far?
Look, I think it's just arrogance, and it's consistent with what they've been doing, across the myriad of other lawsuits that they're involved with. OpenAI is getting kind of sued from all angles right now for a variety of different intellectual property violations. But ultimately they've taken kind of a move fast and break things approach, and that they're getting it from all angles right now. But I think this is particularly egregious because when you open their app, it's every single, you cannot go on a screen and not see the word Cameo all over the place.
Are any outside entities or even just regular citizens trying to help you? I mean, where are you looking? Lawmakers or anything to help? How is this regulated?
Look, I think it starts with trademark law. Like, we got a trademark for a reason. And, in Judge Lee's opinion that she offered on Friday night, that came along with the ordering of the TRO. One of the things that they talk about is, it is in the public interest to adhere to the trademarks that have been issued. So while OpenAI can argue that we shouldn't have gotten the trademark, or we've been rejected for it previously and they were trying to rely on things like that. The reality is we've had this trademark, we've had it for over 5 years. It's reached what's called incontestable status, and ultimately we're just asking them to follow the law. I don't have a problem with the app that they made. I think the technology is really special and exciting and great technology, but you can't do it when you're hijacking our intellectual property.
Yeah, and that was going to be another question that I had for you. I feel like we talk about AI when it comes to just about everything nowadays. So are you anti-AI at this point, or just the way that this was used?
We're anti the way that it was used. I think in general that AI technology is extremely exciting, the potential of it. We use AI in some parts of our business. We have a kids business called Cameo Kids, where we've used AI to work with the license holders of iconic children's properties like Sesame Street and like Peppa the Pig, and actually have been able to bring them to life for kids. We use AI to help summarize the reviews. So when people are looking at somebody's profile on Cameo, you can actually kind of see an aggregate of what people have talked about. Hey, this person does a great birthday message, or this person does a great roast. We use it to improve our search results. We use it to find trending talent. So there's so many places we use it. We're not anti-AI. We're anti-infringement of our federally protected trademarks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So at this point, how do you continue to protect your product? I don't know if there's a timeline. I know sometimes a TRO is like for 30 days, but what do you do long term to protect your product?
Well, first off, it starts with them needing to comply kind of ASAP. With things like this, the standard is often in a reasonable time. And I think our team and their team had wildly different expectations of what reasonable meant, as one tends to do in situations like this. This is an app that's been updated, dozens of times in the last month. So it's literally changing a word in the code. It's not like re-architecturing anything. It's a very, very cosmetic change, and we're expecting OpenAI to, comply with Judge Lee's order ASAP. And the TRO lasts through December 22nd, and our preliminary injunction hearing is December 19th.
Mm-hmm. So let me just throw a wild thing out there. What if OpenAI came to you and offered to buy you out of the name?
Look, we first and foremost just want to get them to stop using the name. There are obviously right and wrong ways to go about using another company's intellectual property. The right way would have been to come and talk to us and say, hey, we're really excited about this. We know you have the trademark. Is there a licensing deal or something like that? And I'm not saying we would have been agreeable to that, because you have to remember that Cameo has always stood for authenticity. In a world of deep fakes, the Cameo watermark is a digital certificate of authenticity. People on the Cameo website know that they're real. And it becomes a really big issue when people Google the word Cameo, and instead of seeing really heartfelt, personalized, authentic fan messages created by celebrities, live people, if it just becomes AI slop at scale. And ultimately, that's the type of thing that could really damage our business. So, it's kind of priceless, our trademark. And, at this point, we're really focused on just getting them to comply with the order. And, we'll keep fighting until they need to do that.
Sure. It's not the first storm that you've weathered. I remember when there was tons of controversy about a particular politician who was on Cameo during the people trying to get him out of office. So talk about maybe a few of the other storms that you have weathered in this time that you've had your company.
Look, Cameo's been around 9 years, and because we deal with people of note, by definition, some are going to be lightning rods, and some aren't. One of the things that we've always believed was that we should be a big tent, and we're a platform that allows anybody to be on it as long as they don't violate either like certain U.S. laws, like we won't let a cartel member on or somebody that's being sanctioned by the U.S. government, a convicted sex offender. So they're a active U.S. politician unless they're raising for a campaign fund, doing campaign fundraising. So there's a list of people that actually aren't allowed to be on. More broadly, we really think about ourselves as a big tent and a marketplace where people can come and ultimately like buy videos from the people that they like. The cool thing about Cameo is it's really paid speech, not free speech. So you're not going to go on Cameo and see things from people you don't like in the same way you might see a retweet from someone you disagree with on X or Twitter. But ultimately, our job is to bring on the people that are most relevant in pop culture. I always say Cameo reflects pop culture, it doesn't make it. So at different times, we've had controversies around people like the Tinder swindler, who was the star of the #1 Netflix documentary in the world when he came on. Certain cast members of the Tiger King, another one that really blew up. Even when Rod Blagojevich, our former governor, came on, that was something that was causing a lot of buzz. But ultimately, these people make excellent videos, and if there's a market for them, they should be on the platform and able to earn a living.
Is there one that has blown up more than any others?
Yeah, I mean, look, George Santos, when he came on,
There you go.
was really as big as we've seen a launch. I mean, I think he broke the launch of the biggest first day ever, the biggest first week, the biggest first month. And I know very famously, within his first 48 hours on the platform, he tweeted that he made more in his first 48 hours on Cameo than he did in his entire first year, or maybe even first 2 years in Congress.
I was alluding to him, but yeah, I wanted you to go ahead and say who it was. Yeah, there was a lot of talk about that for sure. So tell me this, how do you evolve Cameo into the future?
One of the things that, I've been talking a lot to the team about, and I've actually heard Ari Emanuel, another Chicagoan who runs Endeavor, the largest talent agency in the world, talk about, is that in the world of AI, live is kind of the antidote. It's kind of the live bet. We're moving to a world in the US where people, if you go look at hotel bookings on Thursday nights, they're busier than ever. The weekends are getting longer, whether it's, hybrid work schedules, meaning that there's going to be a new golden age of content, a new golden age of live sports, because people are going to need things to occupy their time with. So we think there's three things that need to really be true for Cameo to be a big business in the long term, even without pivoting the core offering. Number one, there are going to be more famous people tomorrow than they are today. And I think when you look at TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and Twitch, it's very clearly true. Secondly, people are more famous in absolute terms than they've ever been. When you look at 2019, Lil Nas X had a song called Old Town Road that became the biggest song in the world. And he was really the first mega breakout musician to come up on TikTok.
Yeah.
And because of that, he got tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of followers. He broke a record from a band in 1999 that you might remember called Chumbawamba that had a song called Tub Thumper. The second the radio stopped playing their song, you never heard from Chumbawamba again. That's because they're pre-social media. So we're in an age where every single athlete, actor, celebrity, creator is their own media network. They're their own channel. And, at scale, we believe that, there's more of those people than ever. In absolute terms, they're bigger than they've ever been. And lastly, Lil Nas X is going to have a platform long after the radio stops playing his song in a way that Chumbawamba didn't. So for all those reasons, we think that the core business of Cameo will continue to grow. There's more people for us. We think there's 50 million people in the world that can be on the platform. We have 60,000. So we're very early in our work, but we also think a lot about live interactions and, how can we do things that AI can't possibly disrupt.
Is there still someone that you want to be on the app that you haven't been able to reach yet?
Yeah, I mean, there's literally hundreds, if not thousands, that our team's been going after all the time. As a good example, Christmas is coming up, and our team just had a call with Macaulay Culkin. We weren't able to get him over the line, but that's one we've always wanted. And my personal top of the wish list has always been Chance the Rapper.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think he's somebody that we always really admired. especially for the charity work, the amazing charity work he does around the city. So he's another one that we'd really love to get on the platform.
Yeah, you got to put that Chicago connection together. Yeah.
We're
Is it?
working it.
I believe you'll get them. Is it the first time you've had to take this type of legal step with anything?
Over the course of the 9-year history of the company, there's different legal matters that pop up from time to time. But this is the one by far that we look at as the most existential because it's really, hitting at the core of what we do. If you Google Cameo and instead of getting to cameo.com, you're inundated with AI slop videos because the sheer magnitude of the amount that are coming out, that's something that could be completely catastrophic for our brand.
Yeah. All right, let's say you are speaking to other folks who want to be entrepreneurs or other companies that are, entering the market and not even your market, but still entering into business. What's your advice to them in the lessons that you're learning, getting this far in your business and especially in the battle that you're facing right now?
So first and foremost, I think very often young entrepreneurs tend to always chase the next hot thing. But the reality is there's going to be hot times and, there's going to be times when your business is extremely hot because the category that it's in is in the zeitgeist. And there's going to be other times where the category you're in is the most uncool thing or nobody wants to invest or nobody wants to work there. So it's really important that you're working on something that's in what the Japanese call your ikigai point. I don't know if you've ever heard of the philosophy Ikigai, but it's probably my favorite thing that I've learned in the entire time of running Cameo. The Japanese believe that to be the best in the world at something, you have to find the intersection and imagine a Venn diagram, but instead of two circles, there's four. And the Japanese believe that to be the best in the world, you need to have the intersection of what are you great at, what does the world need, what can you get paid doing, and what are you and what can you get what can you sorry what do you love to do, what are you great at, what does the world need, and what can you get paid for. And it really has to be the intersection of all four of those things for you to have the gas in the tank basically to keep going on. And I've been really blessed, and my co-founders have as well, that we're working on something that we are so deeply passionate about. And society has valued it and the world needs it, and we love to do it.
Now, have you ever been sued for any type of issue regarding Cameo?
Like, can't me personally, the company?
The company?
Yeah, the company has been involved in lawsuits over the years.
Like, has any other company accused you all of infringement or anything like that?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, again, give us a timeline and when you're expected to hear more about OpenAI.
But from our perspective, I think giving people a reasonable timeline, this order came really late out on Friday night. I think to expect this to be, them to be in compliance with the order by the end of the week feels reasonable to me. Obviously, it's Thanksgiving, but companies like OpenAI are very famous for saying they work 9-9-6, meaning they work 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. So I don't think that an order coming on a Friday night should have prevented them from changing one word in one line of code.
Well, please keep us updated. I might have to go on there and keep checking myself. But please keep us updated on what happens from here. We'll have to have you back to let us know if there's a resolution for sure.
Great. Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Happy Thanksgiving to you, and best with your company.
Appreciate it.
All right. Take care. 1:28 right now, everyone. Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. 1:33 right now, and as I mentioned at the top of our broadcast today, we've talked so much extensively about Operation Midway Blitz, but one of those quintessential moments really in the full operation here thus far, as it's not over, but thus far in Chicagoland was a night in South Shore when we saw federal agents going into an apartment building there. Really, once the cameras leave, you still wonder how the people who weren't taken from that building that night or who returned to that building after that night, how they're doing. And so we just found out that now the residents have formed a union. And I want to bring in Infinity Gant, a housing organizer with Southside Together, to talk a little bit about this new development and where we go from here. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Infinity, tell me a little bit about your role as an organizer and tell me about Southside Together.
Yeah, so I am a tenant organizer with Southside Together. And so Southside Together as an org, we do organizing for housing, for environmental justice, for mental health justice, and for youth and family organizing. And our whole goal is to make sure that people feel, empowered and able to make decisions for themselves in each of these issue areas.
Mm-hmm. How long have you all been around?
So we recently merged, and yeah, our older org has been around for 20 years.
Wow.
This year, 21.
Okay, so how did you then get involved with the tenants or connect with the tenants of this apartment complex in South Shore?
Yeah, so we found out that the building was raided in the beginning of October, like the first week of October. And from there, we knew that we needed to touch base with the people who were inside the building to hear about like what happened. Are people okay? And from there, we found out that, there were problems with the building that, were being handled by the city. So the building had been entered into buildings court and foreclosure court. And then our role was to make sure that the tenants in the building knew what was going on with each of these things and felt like they were able to say how, speak up for themselves in these different court hearings.
Mm-hmm. So their opinions, their lived reality is that they had issues well before these federal raids.
Exactly. Once we talked to tenants, we found out that there were roach infestations, bed bug infestations, mice infestations happening before. The elevators would go out sometimes, and there's standing water on the first floor and the second floor, and it's like sewage water. So there are fleas coming around because it's sewage in the building. And there's mold, there's a smell when you walk into the building. We were even able to enter the building because none of the doors were locked. And all of this existed before ICE even came in.
And so
it actually got worse since ICE came.
And that's what I wanted to ask you. Yeah. So what was their recollection? What were the stories they told you about the night that ICE came in?
That was terrifying that, the people who were on the 5th floor heard footsteps on the ceiling and woke up to that, right? They were confused. Then woke up to some on the lower levels, woke up to people, banging on the doors, and it was just a whole bunch of noise, a whole bunch of lights. A lot of people describe it like something out of a movie. But most accounts are that it was just terrifying, traumatizing.
And traumatizing, I can totally understand. From their perspective and of those that you spoke with, do you know what the demographics are like in that particular building in terms of who would have been or how many people would have been illegal immigrants that federal agents were actually after that night?
So, we did know that there were, like, from accounts we've heard, there were Venezuelans living in the building. But from what I'm hearing from tenants, the management knew that people were living there. And also, I've heard that a few days before, management would come around saying that ICE is coming, and then maybe like a day before, ICE, or not ICE, but management kind of marked certain units. And so now, like, if you look in the building, there are like uh doors that have wooden blocks covering them. And those are the units that ICE rated. But yeah, before that, it was mainly black and Venezuelan.
Did you get the sense that then maybe the federal agents or the federal government had been tipped off to who was living in the building and they were targeting specific locations because of that?
Well, it's come out now that management called ICE. So, and now, like, watching what's happened since ICE has raided the building, it is very clear that this is a way to, like, evict tenants for free, right? Usually, management has to, like, go through court orders and pay to make sure that the eviction is done the right and legal way. But, if you can just call ICE and get people to grab people who are in the building, and then after make the building conditions so unlivable that people feel forced to leave, then that's a way to get people out of the building. And that's what's happening now. We know the Obama Center is a few blocks north. They're talking about a quantum center a few blocks south. And so this building is like sandwiched in the middle of two huge developments that people are looking to make a lot of money from. And it's right off the lake. Like, you cross the street and you can see the lake.
How many people are still living in the building? And what's the payment like in that building? How are people paying to live in the building?
So as of now, there's an unofficial count of about 35. And people are unclear about how to pay. So as of now, it's in receivership with Freedmen Communities, but Freedmen Communities has not reached out to any of the tenants in the building about what that means, what the transfer of management means, who to pay to. A lot of people are scared because they don't want to be behind on rent. It's just been a really confusing process for tenants living there.
Wow. Okay. And so you have people who are scared, who may be traumatized from what they've gone through, who are now questioning maybe a bigger plan that they believe is there to essentially get everyone out of the building, is what you're saying, for the larger projects that may come in and just redevelop the entire area.
Yeah, and so we have been, as an org Southside Together, have been working on we coined it CBA, Community Benefits Agreement, but we just wanted protections for people in Woodlawn and South Shore, because as soon as we heard that the Obama Center was coming in, we knew that there was the threat of displacement for the Black people who were living in the neighborhood. And this is definitely falling into that same notion. Like, a lot of developers are coming in and buying buildings. This was a building that wasn't being taken care of, and so it could be bought for cheap and renovated, and then we can get units. Again, it's off the lake, so who knows how much these units can go for once they fix it up.
And of course, the representatives with the Obama Center have talked about not wanting to displace people in the area, but inevitably there will be some changes around that area as a result of it. Let me ask you this: how do you go about unionizing tenants?
So our process is going in and starting or having meetings to make sure that people are informed about what's going on in the building and that they're not alone in having issues. And from there, we get people to name that they want to start a tenant union and come together to make some demands. And after that, we try to get the rest of the people in the building so that we can have a majority tenant union, which we now have in 7500 South Shore. And yeah, from there we do a launch to just announce that, this building is unionized and we have these demands. And we wait to hear what the targets have to say and go from there.
And the raid was September 30th, so about 2 months ago. Is the building actually, I mean, there are people inside. Is it a functioning building right now, or is it like condemned?
So the building has officially been shut down by the city. The building is very much not functioning. They don't have elevators, and there are tenants who, are elderly, some 80, some have been in the building for, 13, 15 years. And some people are in wheelchairs, and without the elevator, they literally cannot leave their unit. So that is the case for a lot of the tenants. We are now trying to see what the move out date is, and we're trying to make sure that we get some money from the receivers so that people have like relocation funds, because the court ordered that the building be closed before it gets cold. And if you live in Chicago, you know that
Yes,
it's
now.
30 degrees right now. Yeah, so we
And
need someone to
and
do
has
that.
the city offered any type of like waivers for those people? And I mean, it's what 36 people. So have they offered any type of waivers or anything for them to move to other affordable housing?
So that's what we're demanding now, because the city, the court didn't mandate anything. They suggested that freedmen find some relocation projects or relocation, yeah, projects for people to apply to, but nothing was mandated for freedmen to do to assist the tenants in moving out. And so a part of the demands is 7,500 for each tenant, so that they have money to move, they have the moving fees, they have the application fees, things like that, because we know that moving is really hard, especially in the winter. And another piece of that is CHA expediting the inspection process for people on Section 8, because a lot of the tenants are on Section 8, and we don't want that to be a holdup to people moving out.
Yeah. And I'm seeing here that the Tribune reported no public criminal charges were ever filed against anyone in connection with that raid that everyone saw posted online that happened in the middle of the night. For the people that are left, were any of them taken out and then returned? Or are these folks who were in there before and who remain?
People who were taken out from the raid.
Yeah, are any of the people any of the 36 that you're talking about who are in there right now, were any of them taken out in the raid and then returned, or were these folks who had lived there before?
We've heard of no one being returned from the ICE raid.
All right. Okay, so timeline wise, you're still waiting to find out when people have to leave that building and what types of resources they may be afforded.
Yes. So I'm trying to get a confirmation on the timeline for people to move out. It is now rumor that we are trying to make sure that it is clear what has been happening, because we just heard about the bank having a what is the word? That basically there were meetings taken yesterday without any of the tenants knowing, or any of the organizers who are helping the tenants knowing about an expedited move out date. And so yeah, we're trying to make sure that it's rumored that this date will be as soon as next Friday, December 5th. And especially with no official notice from Freedmen or anything like that, we want to make sure that this is sure. And if it is, we want to make sure that the city is putting pressure on Freedmen communities and the bank and whoever they need to make sure that, because a week and a half is not enough time to move out. So we want to make sure that we are giving tenants as much time as possible to be able to move.
Are there other people, when you look at your structure of Southside Together, I mean, do you have attorneys, or like what types of resources are you connecting people with in terms of like fighting the legalities of this, or connecting them with something that might help them financially, like you said with CHA, or what other resources or people or organizations are you bringing together to the table to help these folks?
So Southside Together primarily does like the tenant organizing in the building and like larger policy campaigns. Before this, we do work with other partner orgs to make sure that, people have the lawyer representation when we're going to the courts and things like that.
Yeah. What's your overall takeaway from the situation that these folks are in right now?
My overall takeaway is that, the conversation has been centering ICE, and centering how, the ICE raids are bad and wrong, but the conversations have not been about the tenants and how, number one, that they've been experiencing like horrible conditions way before ICE, but number two, how, they're now being forcefully evicted from a building that some people were in for, a little under a decade, or a little under 2 decades. And so I do think that it is now time to shift the conversation from the ICE raid to the tenants who were affected by it and have been affected by poor conditions in the building since way before ICE was even a conversation.
Yeah. Well, please continue to keep us updated, especially if you have a date of December 5th. If I recall correctly, you saying that there should be some developments here. Please let us know. I'd really be interested in wanting to follow what happens from here in this situation for the folks who are left there, whether they end up in a better place possibly, or what happens to them from here. Obviously, they're in a pretty tough situation, especially like you said, with the weather turning like it is even this week. But please keep us updated. And let me ask you this before I let you go. Are there ways for other people to step in and support the mission?
Yeah, so you can go to southsidetogether.org, and you can find the staff there and reach out to us about connecting. You can also email me, Infinity, INFINITI, at southsidetogether.org. And then we can connect and, plug you into different things you can do to help.
Yeah. Do you find that your resources, your organization is needed more and more? We've got a lot of older buildings in the area. Do you find more people reaching out who are in similar situations?
Well, this was a very unique building just because of the ICE raid. But people having problems with their landlord or things like that, that is a pretty common thing. We definitely get more in the winter time just because, we get calls about having no heat in the buildings or things like that. But, you know, slumlords have been in the neighborhood for a long time, and especially with the Obama Center coming in, those notices have been definitely coming in more and more.
It's a very interesting situation. Again, please keep us updated. Okay, Infinity Gant with Southside Together. Great having that conversation with her. It's about 1:54 right now. Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Representative Curtis, CUR.
Welcome back, everyone. 1:57 right now, and as we approach the 2 o'clock hour, we're getting ready for a press conference that's going to be about a lawsuit that we have followed for several weeks now. Just to take you back as we give you this live picture to the setup there, this is going to be the law firm of Romanucci and Blandin that's holding this press conference to announce a civil lawsuit for the secret videotaping of multiple medical patients at Hanson Family Chiropractic in Batavia, Illinois. let me take you back to when we first got word of this particular situation. It was November 6th when we got the first information and mugshot of the chiropractor David Hansen in that area. You may recall, if you've been watching us for a while, we spoke to the state's attorney in this area who walked us through the case, because at the time they were seeking to identify victims of this chiropractor, David Hansen, who is the owner of Hansen Family Chiropractic in Batavia. He is now charged with producing child pornography, 5 counts, disseminating child pornography, 3 counts, possessing child pornography, which is a Class 2 felony, 6 counts, and unauthorized video recording of a minor through or under their clothes. It's a Class 3 felony, and there were 3 counts. The numbers may seem small, but according to the investigation, this is why they were asking for other people to come forward. Hansen secretly videotaped over 180 of his patients as they were undressed or were unclothed in some form. The victims aged from young children to adults. The victims were mostly female. Many of the recordings appear to be taken from what they called a red light room in that particular business, near infrared light therapy. And he made the video recordings using hidden cameras that were secretly placed throughout his chiropractic office. He's also been found to be possessing and disseminating multiple videos that were taken there containing child sexual abuse material that were unrelated to his chiropractic business. So there was a lot going on with this. And again, we first found out about it on the 6th of this month. His home and his chiropractic office were searched at that point in time. This was November 5th when they were searched. There was a warrant at that point in time taken out for him. He was arrested and he was brought to court for a pretrial detention hearing right around that time. Obviously, the state's attorney, when we spoke to her, was seeking for him to be held during the court proceedings here. And again, they believe this was much more extensive than the 5 or 6 or 3 counts that he was charged with at that point in time. Again, a possible 180 or more people that he could have violated in over the course of many years here, but them just finding out about it in 2025. But his business had been around for several years before that. One of the things that we spoke about with the state's attorney was just the level of violation, that this is someone who was right there in the community, well known, well loved, well respected, and how people in this community generally feel like the person was right there under your nose. You didn't even know that this person would be then charged with something as horrific as these charges are. Again, I mean, this goes back into children, not just bad things that have happened to adults, but children, which puts it on a totally different level. So there was a joint investigation with Batavia Police and also the Child Exploitation Unit of the Kane County State's Attorney's Office. They handed it off to the State's Attorney's Office there, and they were assisted by the Lake County Sheriff's Office. They used canines to go through his business, and that played a large role, they say, in finding the hidden cameras that were throughout his business there. So obviously the charges are not proof of guilt here, but they do believe that there's not a lot of wiggle room on what they have found. One of the things that we also talked with the state's attorney about was how they were able to find this, how they were able to get notice of this. You know, did someone stumble upon one of these cameras? And they talked about the level of kind of dark web the activity that was going on where this is concerned, and that got tipped off, and then, like, piece by piece, they were able to really unfold this entire situation that went back to this one business in Batavia. And they talked about looking through, encrypted, how hard it was for them to get through encrypted files and videos to access what was extensive evidence in their case that they were able to stumble upon. Again, they are still looking for people to come forward, even though they're getting ready to hold this press conference today. They have still been looking for people to come forward. They say if you believe that you or possibly your child or a child that you know of may have been victimized by this David Hansen there in Batavia, or maybe you have some additional information that law enforcement should be aware of, you're asked to call 630-444-3322. You can see here reporters are still setting up. That is a picture on the right side of your screen of David Hansen that I was just speaking of there. That is his mugshot of David Hansen, the owner of this particular chiropractic business, Hansen Family Chiropractic in Batavia, Illinois here. Again, the number to call if you need help, 630-444-3322, or if you can be of help in this situation. There's also an email address. I'll give that to you as well while we're waiting for this press conference to begin. It is SAO, as in State's Attorney's Office, SAO Victim Hotline. That's all one word, SAO Victim Hotline at kanecountyil.gov. SAO Victim Hotline at kanecountyil.gov. Again, if you need help or if you can be of help, please use that phone number or use that email address and reach out. He is charged with secretly recording nude videos of unsuspecting adults and children. And so the law firm of Romanucci and Blandin, LLC, is going to be holding this press conference any moment now here to announce civil lawsuits now against this chiropractor, his office. He is the owner now for secretly videotaping patients during treatment. There's also a state representative who is going to be joining them and sharing some new details of a legislative proposal to improve privacy for children moving forward. Obviously, we never want to see anything like this happen, but one of the, if you can say, best things to come from it would be that there is some type of legislation to keep it from happening to anyone else. Let's go ahead and listen in as they get ready to begin.
Let's get underway. Thank you for joining us. We are going to be talking about a rash of hidden camera cases in the Chicago area and what we hope to do about it, both from a civil side and from a legislative side. So I want to acknowledge a few people and then we'll get underway with remarks. I'd like to acknowledge the attorneys working on this case, including our founding partner, Antonio Romanucci. I'd like to acknowledge managing partner Gina DeBoni, senior partner Mike Holden, who is not able to be here today, partner Daisy Ion, Sarah Raish, and Maura White. I'd also like to acknowledge the contributions of our senior paralegals who are critical to this case, Dana Condos, Lucy Gonzalez, and Yaz Morales Castro. And then lastly, you will hear today from Illinois State Representative Curtis Tarver, who is a Democrat from the 25th District. And before we get underway with remarks, I'd also like to acknowledge our co-counsel, Rena Infelice, of Rhodian Infelice, who was unable to be here today, but valued all the same. Tony.
Thank you. And good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. It seems like we've told this story before about hidden cameras being in places where they shouldn't be. And when you look at why we're telling this story today, it's because we're likening this to a plague. It's a plague that is afflicting our communities. It's a plague that can't be fixed or solved with a vaccine. There is no medication that can take care of this plague. And so we have to figure out a solution. We are here to problem solve. Why are there so many hidden cameras in places where people have their expectation of privacy, where they are in a location where they are compromised, where they don't know that they're being compromised, where they are in a state of undress, or maybe even fully or half naked, and people, predators, continue to use these hidden cameras to their advantage. And so that's why we're here today. We're here to solve this festering problem. This is a violation of trust. It is disgusting and it's damaging. You hear many people say, well, they don't know that they're being recorded. What's the harm? There is a lot of harm in having your privacy invaded and not knowing it until afterwards. It comes with a lot of embarrassment. It comes with self-doubts about why you let it happen. So there is something that needs to be done, and we are aiming to stop it. Either we stop it with criminal justice, but we're offering a better solution to the problem, civil justice, by strengthening our laws and ensuring that no one can ever video record a susceptible person or a child in a compromised or undressed situation without knowing that they are being recorded. And this behavior, particularly in a healthcare setting, is toxic and deeply harmful to any individual. And when you see it happening over and over again in different places to a growing number of people, we know that things need to change. And that's why we're here today. So our firm, Romanucci Blandin, has filed a civil lawsuit against the Batavia chiropractor's office and its owner for secretly videotaping patients during treatment. But the sad thing is that this is only one of the types of cases that we have regarding invasion of privacy. This will be 4 that we have right now. This is what's deeply disturbing. And it's even worse that it's impacting children as well as adults. So the cure for this plague will take several steps. We took our first by filing the civil lawsuit, and there is already the criminal justice angle is in place with charges being brought against the chiropractors and the owner for what they did. And then, of course, we need legislative action to create systemic accountability and change. And that's why Representative Curtis Tarver is here today. That's where he comes in. You'll hear from him in a minute and what he plans to do about this in terms of new legislation to protect children and adults from hidden cameras. Something, unbelievably, that our state does not have. You would think that there were invasion of privacy laws for civil cases. Does not exist. We're going to change that. And we thank him for his leadership and his immediate willingness to take on this important cause for our communities. And thank you, Representative Tarver. Now, legislation will be the vaccine for this problem. We are here to solve problems for our clients and constituents in a multidimensional, transformational approach. That will be full justice. Let me give you a little bit more background before I turn it over on what happened first. Children, parents, and grandparents in suburban Chicago have all been exploited by being secretly video recorded during medical treatments. They were vulnerable and they should have been in a safe place. Our new civil lawsuit details how the male owner of a Chicago suburban chiropractor's office abused the trust of his medical clients by secretly recording them in treatment rooms. So this lawsuit is on behalf of 4 patients, 3 generations from one family, all of whom believe they were violated by secret recordings in this medical office. Additional lawsuits on behalf of more plaintiffs in this matter will be coming forth soon. So this case is disturbingly similar to recent allegations of secret video recordings of young female employees in a bathroom of a suburban ice cream shop in Addison. We filed a civil complaint against the Flavor Frenzy ice cream shop and its owner on behalf of 11 young female plaintiffs earlier this fall. The store owner is also criminally charged in that case. Had the legislation that we're proposing been on the books, that wouldn't have happened. There would have been a clear warning sign that they were being recorded. And our law firm is also investigating 2 other recent reports of hidden cameras in 2 Chicago area businesses where people may have been secretly recorded in states of undress. We'll have more information on those cases coming up, but certainly it is our hope that not only are we bringing one anchor, one part of justice to this case by the civil lawsuit, but by closing all the gaps. And now I'd like to introduce Sarah Raish to the stand, and she'll talk to you more about the case. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. In our latest civil case involving secret videotaping when people have an expectation of privacy, the place at stake is the medical office is Hansen Family Chiropractic in Batavia, Illinois. The Kane County State's Attorney's Office has charged the office owner, David Hansen, with multiple felony counts, including producing and disseminating child pornography, possession of child pornography, and unauthorized video recording of a minor. The indictment states that there were hidden cameras in a room used for red light or near infrared light therapy. He was also charged with possession and dissemination of sexual images of children, which are unrelated to the office recordings. Our legal team believes that dozens of innocent people have been harmed by inappropriate and negligent conduct at this medical office. Our clients are distressed, disgusted, and deeply disturbed that a predator may have violated them without their knowledge and without their consent. When a person seeks medical treatment, there is an assumption of trust, that the healthcare provider is there to help heal them and to improve their quality of life. Nothing seems farther from the truth at Hansen Family Chiropractic. We will do everything we can to get accountability and justice for our clients. I'd now like to turn it over to partner Daisy Ione to tell you more about the cases.
Thanks, Sarah. Good afternoon. As Sarah stated, we are closely monitoring what's happening with the criminal case. Our clients are ready to help in any way that they can, and we are cooperating with the Kane County State's Attorney's Office for their work on this case. Together, we represent 4 individuals who were treated at the Hansen Family Chiropractor, and they have serious concerns about their trust being violated. Our complaint has multiple counts. It was filed yesterday in the Circuit Court of Kane County, and the 4 plaintiffs are all members of the same family. 2 of them include minors. Our clients are suing both the individual owner of the clinic as well as the practice itself, and we have different counts including invasion of privacy, negligence, intentional infliction of emotional distress, negligent infliction of emotional distress, and various other theories, including the violation of the Illinois Consumer Fraud and Deceptive Practices Act. What you'll hear and what you'll read in the complaint is that there was a huge violation of privacy and of trust, and our clients have suffered immensely. As Tony Romanucci mentioned before, not only are there serious concerns for trust, but what happens in these types of cases is that clients don't know what happens to their images. They don't know who has access to these images, how many people have viewed them, and that is a deep, deep concern, especially because these images now exist on the internet and other places, and so there's reputational harm that they have suffered. I have a short statement from one of our clients, Jane Doe 1. She said, "Our family is in complete disbelief that someone we turn to for help and healing has violated us in this way. And for so many members of our own family to be exploited, it raises serious concerns about how many other people have suffered the same harm. The actions of this chiropractor seriously diminish our trust in healthcare providers. Thank you for your time, and now I'm going to pass it over to partner Gina DeBoni for some additional information.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Abusers pick their victims carefully, and this medical professional counted on his position of power to prevent him from ever being held accountable for his misconduct. Children are taught at an early age to trust their medical providers. There's no greater trust of that between a doctor and his patients. These children trusted him. He exploited them. The conduct Hansen is accused of is vile and abhorrent. We do not believe that any of our clients were aware of the secret recording. Here, children undressed in what should have been a safe and protected space. All the while, they were being secretly recorded. Patients should feel safe in their medical provider's office. They deserve and have an expectation of privacy. Instead, their trust was betrayed in the most horrendous way. This deeply troubling predatory behavior in healthcare is also not a new behavior to our team, which has represented dozens and dozens of people who were exploited or abused by their healthcare providers. These types of cases where there is a predator in the community are particularly important to our firm. Romanucci and Blandin has a history of representing clients in these types of cases, seeking accountability in the pursuit of justice. Our team has worked on countless of abuse cases, including those by clergy, scout leaders, high school sports coaches, medical providers, and others. We have a commitment to combating human trafficking and have worked with our client Yvonne Ambrose, whose 16-year-old daughter Desiree Robinson was trafficked and murdered in the Chicago area in 2016. Yvonne testified in Washington, D.C., and was present when that federal law was signed, which held the .coms accountable for knowingly engaging in the facilitation of sex trafficking of minors. And in the last year and a half, we have represented multiple families in suburban Arlington Heights whose elementary school children had their prescription medications swapped and substituted by the school nurse, putting these children at significant risk and doing harm to them in their emotional and educational development. We're pleased to have recently seen a criminal conviction in that case. You know, I want to talk for a minute about the impact of behavior this has in our case. Our law firm is trauma-informed, trained, and very aware of the present and future implications of this type of exploitation and abuse. No two people are the same or have the same types of reaction to the violations of this kind. Many people's reactions even change over time. They're experiencing freezing, disbelief, shame, anger, and confusion. We have filed on behalf of each of them as Doe pseudonyms to protect their identities. Our clients are both children and adults. As you know, this took place in a suburban environment where words of these things spread quickly, and we ask that everyone please respect the privacy of these individuals. The last thing I'll say is this: abuse can happen anywhere, at any time, in any town, to any person. People need to pay attention all of the time. They need to be aware of their surroundings, things that don't seem quite right, and speak up if they have concerns. Senior Attorney Maura White will now briefly walk you through the details of our complaint from a few weeks ago in the other hidden camera case. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gina. Allow me to share an overview of a similar case we filed last month to give you a sense of what Tony mentioned earlier, the plague of this type of behavior in our community. The civil complaint was filed on October 22nd of this year in DuPage County on behalf of 11 female plaintiffs. The defendants in that case include Flavor Frenzy LLC, the shop's owner and operator, Steven Weisberg, who is also criminally charged. The defendants in this case are an ice cream shop, Flavor Frenzy, which is located at 48 West Lake Street in Addison, Illinois, and Steven Weisberg, the owner and operator of Flavor Frenzy. We claim in our lawsuit that he used the business as a vehicle to recruit, exploit, and endanger minor female employees. He instructed all female employees that their work uniform consisted of a t-shirt and tight black pants, and they were required to model Flavor Frenzy t-shirts or other apparel for purported website photographs. But unbeknownst to these plaintiffs, Whitesburg installed a hidden camera disguised as an electrical outlet in the store's restroom. Whitesburg required minor employees to repeatedly change clothing in that restroom, purportedly for business marketing purposes, often supplying bras and Flavor Frenzy branded garments to record them in various states of undress. We will fight relentlessly to hold both this individual and his business accountable and to deliver justice for all of our clients, the kind of justice that they deserve. I'd like to take a moment now to introduce Illinois State Representative Curtis Tarver of the 21st District here in Illinois. He's a small business owner and he is a friend of civil justice. He will detail legislation to provide accountability and oversight of businesses' use of cameras in semi-private or private areas, particularly where children are involved. Representative Tarver.
Thank you. Good afternoon. As she said, I'm State Representative Curtis Tarver. I'm disgusted by the allegations of what happened. I'm appalled as a lawyer, a legislator, but most importantly, as a father of a 12-year-old daughter. A bathroom, a treatment room, those are places where privacy should be unquestioned. When someone hides a camera in those spaces, they don't just violate privacy, they violate basic human trust. To the survivors who've come forward through their attorneys, thank you for your courage. You're telling your story is not just simply telling your story. You're protecting the next child, the next employee, the next family. I'm proud to stand here with Romanucci Blandin's law firm because they've long been champions for those who refuse to be silenced, like these individuals who've come forward. They are doing their part. For my part, next week I intend to file the Protecting Children from Hidden Cameras Act, a civil statute built to hold people and businesses accountable. First, it will prohibit hidden cameras in bathrooms, locker rooms, medical treatment rooms, and places generally where individuals would expect to have privacy. Second, it will target covert spy devices that are designed to record without notice. Third, it will require clear on-site disclosures anywhere a business records customers or its employees. Fourth, it will add hidden camera screening to safety inspections. And last but not least, it will state clearly that recording a child is traumatic. That means the law will recognize the harm automatically. It will be presumed that there's trauma because the violation is just that severe. I carried legislation last year codifying that the sexual assault of a child is per se traumatic. After the Chicago public school system paid an expert who testified that not all sexual assault of a child is traumatic. We passed that legislation for the same reason we will pass this legislation. Sometimes we have to write into law what should be common sense in a civilized society. When I return to Springfield in January, I intend to move this Protecting Children from Hidden Cameras Act immediately. And I expect my colleagues to do their part on both sides of the aisle because protecting children should never be controversial or political issue. Thank you all.
Thank you, Representative. We'll now open up for questions.
Actually two. One for you, Representative. How, by enacting this law and passing it and getting it on the books, how does that help future victims and survivors get justice that they might not get without this law on the books?
Sure. I mean, I think the first thing is obviously the disclosure, the safety inspections, those types of things that would at least tend to alert someone, right? Now, if somebody's going to secretly record regardless, then we're back in the same situation. But I do think particularly with children, with it being per se traumatic, that is a significant protection against those businesses and individuals who seek to harm children.
And how often would the safety inspections occur?
So it likely depends on municipalities. Some have home rules, some don't. But obviously when a business is opening or annually, just like people come out and inspect elevators or inspect other safety, the fire marshals come out, so the different municipalities I think will be able to cover that. But we want to make sure that it's on the books that they have to do it. Sure.
Are there any laws regarding the presence of a parent with a child, the doctor? If a child's very young, I would imagine they'd have their parent with them all along, the whole time. But is there an age cutoff or anything? where they'd want a child, where a child would have to have a parent with them.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So, I mean, if these children are being videotaped, I mean, how old were they? Would there be some type of law where you say, under a certain age, they'd have to have a parent present with them?
So the language that's being drafted does not contemplate requiring a parent to be present. Because like in a situation like we're talking about these young ladies, it sounds like they were changing in a restaurant.
I'm thinking for a doctor's office.
Sure.
I mean,
sure.
a little kid always has their parent with them, presumably.
Typically, sure.
Okay.
So I can't tell you every law in the book. What I can tell you is this for sure will seek to have a heightened protection for children, whether the parents are around or not.
Question for the attorneys. When we initially covered this case, the state's attorney was asking anyone who thought they were a victim to come forward so they could go through the process of identifying whether they were in fact on the recordings. Have your clients taken that step yet, or do you plan to?
So we certainly plan to, and the clients that we're representing today that have filed, we have many others behind them. So there are many others, but this is just the first wave of lawsuits that's coming against Hansen.
There were members of the same family? That's several generations?
That is correct.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, what we're talking about is, parent, child, and I don't know who the other generation was. Who knows? Who? A grandparent. So it was familial.
And did one of them have an idea or something, or how did it come about that they knew?
Yeah, they were not aware. They were not aware. We discovered it through other means, or they discovered it through other means.
And how was it discovered? Who was the first? How did this?
I don't have that information right now. No. Anyone else? All good? All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Good seeing you. Thank you. Thank you, Christian. Good seeing you. Good seeing you again, always.
In there to a press conference with some obviously disturbing allegations, as I kind of mentioned before we even went to it, just to prep you for what we were getting ready to hear. Romanucci and Blandin, LLC, this law firm now announcing a civil lawsuit against Batavia, Illinois chiropractor's office, Hansen Family Chiropractic, there in Batavia, Illinois, on behalf of 4 people from the same family who believe they were recorded without their knowledge there at that particular business. And so they call this a plague, and that they're looking to find a solution. They are aiming to stop anyone from ever enduring something like this as they work on behalf of this family, but wanting to make sure no one else ends up in this situation as well, that everyone should be able to expect a reasonable portion of privacy in businesses, and that predators should not be able to continue to use cameras to their advantage. They talked about the violation of trust that this, something like this causes for people, and that this is just one of 4 similar cases that they are currently handling right now. One of them is another case that we have followed closely about a business called Flavor Frenzy in Addison, and they are representing 11 young people in that particular case there who were told to go into a particular bathroom and change, and that bathroom had a hidden camera in it. They talked about systemic accountability and change that needs to happen at this point in time, and that there's currently no invasion of privacy laws for civil cases. And they said if this is overall a plague, they believe that is the vaccine to the problem. And so they brought up Illinois State Representative Curtis Tarver of the 25th District, who is now announcing that he is putting forth legislation to protect children from hidden cameras. It's a Protect Children from Hidden Cameras Act that he intends to bring before the state state legislature in January. He said sometimes you have to write into law the things that should be common sense. They talked about people being distressed, disgusted, deeply disturbed, but wanting to act on behalf of people currently in this situation and making sure that no others should follow. So again, listening into that, we will continue to follow up on both of those very disturbing cases that they are representing people in. But we want to talk about some other things that are going on right now. Of course, this is a week where many families are gathering, of course, for the holiday, Thanksgiving coming up in just a couple of days. And then the next day is Black Friday. And boy, do we tend to bust our budgets in one day for Black Friday. Ted Rossman, Bankrate Senior Industry Analyst, is joining me now to talk a little bit about where we stand with the September retail sales report just being released this morning. Thanks for your time.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Were you happy, or should we be very concerned with the new report?
The new report was fine, I would say. A little bit less than expectations, but nothing to worry about. Retail sales are still growing, 0.2% month over month, 4.3% year over year. It's a little bit less than analysts had expected, but still firmly above the inflation rate, which is about 3%. One of the big themes in the economy this year has been that people are still spending despite a gloomy mood. Consumer sentiment is at or near record lows, but actual data has been better. Some of it's propped up by higher income households, but people are still spending heading into the holidays. It's expected to be a pretty good year for retailers this holiday season.
Okay, and how does that translate for us if it's a pretty good year for retailers this holiday season?
The National Retail Federation's expectation is for roughly a 4% gain over last year. We're hearing similar things from MasterCard, Deloitte, and others. In other words, a little bit better than the inflation rate. So that is actually real sales growth. It's kind of surprising on the face of it, just because people are worried about inflation. They're worried about tariffs. They're worried about the job market. And people have been saying for years that a recession is around the corner. The truth is, consumer spending continues to climb that wall of worry. Some of it is that even though people are strained by higher prices, for the most part, they're still working, their wages are going up. I know it's not easy and it doesn't feel good if you get a raise and it just goes towards higher prices. We should also mention the higher income piece. Moody's says the top 10% of earners are accounting for 50% of all spending. That's an all-time high. That's powering a lot of the overall growth.
So is that a rich getting richer, poor getting poorer type of scenario?
It is, very much so. And it's not a great thing overall. Certainly, we would rather have broad-based gains rather than being concentrated among a few. That's kind of been a feature of the economy lately. We see it not just with consumers, but also with businesses where stocks have been hitting record highs, but it's been largely based on a small group of tech companies that have been powering the market higher. But to bring it back to the consumer angle, we could look at something like credit card debt, where half of credit card holders pay in full every month and half carry debt. That really exemplifies this trend. Half are using cards for rewards and convenience. The other half are stuck paying a 20% interest rate. That's a big difference.
Yeah, it's a huge difference in the long run, especially when you talk about building wealth. So what are the sectors that are doing well? What are the sectors that are more concerning?
What we saw in this report was a real divide between the month-over-month stats and the year-over-year. The year-over-year was more favorable. So there were a number of sectors that actually declined from August to September, but actually grew at least 5% year over year. So that would be things like cars, electronics, appliances. Some of these bigger ticket items, tariffs have been weighing very much on sentiment. To be fair, we actually haven't seen prices change that much on the store shelves, but people are worried that they might be changing. So that could be influencing some of this. We also saw a pull forward where back in the spring and early summer, some people raced to buy cars and refrigerators and washing machines and other things that they thought might soon become more expensive. The actual inflation data is showing us a much calmer scenario year over year. Toys and clothes are pretty flat year over year. Jewelry's up a couple percentage points. TVs are down 6. A lot of the holiday favorites are going to cost more or less what they did last year. So that's a good news for inflation-weary consumers. The bark is a bit worse than the bite, although it's the cumulative effect that's really significant. Prices are up 25% on average from the start of 2021. That's what people are feeling more than actual changes this year.
Yeah. So is there a sweet spot going into the holidays that we should keep in mind, or something that we should note for this year that's changed?
Well, this is another silver lining. The discounts are out there. They started early. They're going to keep going through the holidays. A trend we've observed in recent years is a longer holiday shopping season. Black Friday really starts in October now. When we think about Target Circle Week, Amazon Prime, Big Deal Days, other events like that, the season has lengthened. Retailers are offering discounts. They're acknowledging that the consumer is very value conscious, and they're spending, but they're spending thoughtfully. They want a deal. We're going to see good promotions through the holidays. The buyer does have the upper hand this year.
All right. And then I know that we're still waiting on like a December, another report to be released in December. Is that right?
Yeah, we're still waiting on the October sales. So the one that we got today was from September, so it's backlogged because of the government shutdown. It remains to be seen if and when we get the October data, or if we just kind of skip ahead to November. Normally these things are released on a 1 month lag, but we're 2.5 months late at this point. My expectation, though, is the holiday season will be pretty good, and if we see a consumer spending pullback, it's more likely to be next year after the holidays.
Okay, Ted Rossman with Bankrate. We appreciate you as always. Thank you so much for your time. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, thank you. You too.
All right, take care. 2:39 right now. We'll be right back. 2:42. Welcome back, everyone. So happy to have our own Scott Schneider up here for the first time on Chicago Live. Thank you so much for coming up. I know you're getting ready for the 4 o'clock, but you have something maybe even bigger that you are getting ready to release. So there's a documentary, The Age of Discovery, that so many people, I mean, when you talk about something that's much anticipated, so many people have been talking about this, and you got to talk to the mind behind it.
Yeah, the filmmaker. First of all, pleasure to be with you for the first time. I've been looking forward to this. Just let me give you a little bit of a backstory. I think we all, as journalists, have passion pursuits. Long before I ever knew I was going to do this, and I've been doing it for over 30 years, I was told a story by my grandparents. My grandparents, my grandmother, my great-grandmother, lived about a block apart in Northern California. Okay. And they told me a tale of a UFO encounter. And what was unique about it, Anita, was the specifics. They told me the story independently of one another. I was very curious about it, and I asked for specific details of each of them. And the story they told me was remarkable. And what they saw was not a flying saucer, but a rectangle, a dark rectangle in the middle of the night that made no sound. It had no thrust. It was dead silent. It hovered above them. A small window opened up. They saw some sort of beings in the window, and then in an instant, it disappeared before their eyes.
What year was this?
This was probably in the 80s.
Okay.
Okay.
And they both saw the very same thing.
They saw the very same thing, and I carried that with me, and I've carried it with me through the entirety of my career. And I've been one of those people that I've always wanted to know the truth, because I've always felt like, as Americans, as human beings, we've always been treated as children on this front, that the government, not only of this country, but of countries around the world, have been keeping one of the greatest secrets of humanity from us.
Did they know more than what they're releasing?
They know more than what they're releasing. So here we come with The Age of Disclosure. I had an opportunity to speak to Dan Farah, the filmmaker, and he, unlike movies of the past, documentaries of the past, the weight of his guests, of the people that he got to speak to him, the Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Kirsten Gillibrand, a senator who is on the Intelligence Committee, former naval aviators, Air Force personnel, Secretary of Defense, to admit that the government has not only been hiding the truth from us, but offering specific details. And a lot of this, Anita, comes from what you and I in the media and other journalists have been reporting for several years now, and that is the existence of what we call UAPs, this unidentified aerial phenomenon or anonymous phenomenon. And what makes these different from the UFOs that our mom and dads and our grandparents, these are not your mom and dad's flying saucers. These are objects, first and foremost, that do things that our technology is nowhere near capable of doing. So, for example, we talk about observables, hypersonic velocity. Our fastest planes known to man can do 4,000 miles an hour. These things are doing 40,000 miles an hour.
And I guess the thought would be, it doesn't have to be an alien. It could be surveillance of some sort.
We don't know with 100% certainty what it is. That said, there's a caveat there, but let me also say other things that they can do: instantaneous acceleration. So similar to what the story I told you about what my grandparents talked about with their own encounter, at a standstill and then taking off at the blink of an eye. We don't have that technology. So what happened was, thanks to whistleblowers, in particular a man named Lou Elizondo, who is prominent in this documentary, he and others became part of a task force. And what they did was they started taking a good hard look at a lot of the video that was taken from very credible sources. Again, Navy pilots, Air Force
who have
pilots.
long said that they have seen things.
And they were afraid to speak out because there's long been a stigma. You know, we talk about this tinfoil hat society, those of us that want to believe but we're afraid we're going to be criticized if we talk about it out loud. I've encountered it in my career, talking to intelligent people that kind of roll their eyes saying, sure, Scott, whatever you say. But the conversation, the narrative has really changed in recent years. And what they found out, these individuals who are part of this task force, is that since the 1940s, there's been something in our government called the Legacy Program. This is at the crux of this documentary. This is why I urge people, it's streaming right now. It's also in select theaters. if you have even a passing interest in what's going on with this possibility that we are not alone in the universe, watch this film because it is fascinating.
Well, they had a whole congressional hearing where, you're kind of like,
and they've called these whistleblowers, and they've talked about the fact that there is, within the government, this shadow organization that has been actively involved in a Cold War, Anita, right now with China, with Russia. And what they've done, and it's absolutely, it is sensational, but there is evidence with regard to what these people have seen. These are people who were contracted by the US government to conduct these investigations. Crashed crafts that have then been collected. These are exotic crafts. They've been collected secretly, and then their technology has been reverse engineered. Okay? And again, this is, I know it sounds crazy, but the fact that it is being kept top secret even from United States senators, from congressmen, from presidents. And the reason is so they have plausible deniability. Because people have said, why wouldn't Donald Trump? Because we all know Donald Trump is a straight shooter. Why wouldn't he come out and say, yes, there are aliens, we are not alone?
And I guess the thought would be, if one person is saying it, maybe it's crazy. But again, you have a list of people who are all kind of corroborating, no, there's something we haven't been told. Again, if you can actually have a measurable item that you can have in hand and then kind of go back and work as to how it was in the sky, you can't really say it's crazy. There's something to it at least.
If we go back to the war, World War II, and the Manhattan Project, that was a race for world domination. And we were fortunate, the United States, we won that war. We were the first to develop a nuclear weapon, and it changed the course of mankind. Because we dropped the bomb on Japan, they surrendered, and it gave us a leg up. Of course, now we are not the only nuclear power. But imagine that this power, this technology that we are seeing play out, this ability not only to create speeds, also these, Anita, these crafts, they can create speeds underwater that we don't have the ability to. They can go from space to air to underwater. This is documented. We have these images on film that have been examined by physicists, by scientists, okay? But now imagine some of the other things that they have been documented doing. They have hovered over naval bases, over installations that are nuclear. And what they've done is, in one case, in Montana, there were 20 or so nuclear missiles. They disabled. They were hovering over them. And real quick, just so for me personally, again, going back to that story I was told, a large rectangular black object was hovering over a nuclear facility, and it disabled 20 nuclear warheads. There was no contact. It didn't actually touch the ground. It did so literally by hovering over this base. So now imagine, just follow along with me just for a second. If you are the country that can harness that technology, whether it be by speed, by the ability to disable somebody's nuclear weapons, you now are the world dominating power going forward. Which is why it makes perfect sense that this is happening in secret, that the US doesn't want Russia to know what we're doing, China doesn't want us to know what they're doing, and it is an arms race like we've never seen before.
Well, even if you take there's so much conversation this week even about Ukraine and Russia, but if you take what we saw in, say, World War II, the type of the type of interaction that two countries would have in war versus what we're seeing now with, say, there was a moment when Ukraine sent in drones in. Russia didn't know they were in their airspace, boom, 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 boom. All of a sudden, they're like, wait, what's going on? So this is like on a totally different level, but something of that sort.
It is. It's the same conversation, but with a technology that we are just not in possession of. And to your earlier point about whether or not it is, in fact, alien, there was a hearing. They brought in whistleblowers who said they had observed what they call non-human biologics. And what they are saying is they witnessed otherworldly beings. And the bodies of otherworldly beings, that they are somewhere, they're in a non-disclosed area, but that the U.S. has them, that Russia has them, that China has them. At least that's what we know. That's been leaked out by whistleblowers. Thank goodness for the whistleblowers. And another thing too, I know we don't have a lot of time left, but there is something called the UAP Disclosure Act, and it is languishing in Congress right now. And what they are, all the Congress people who are behind it, including Kristen Gillibrand and some others, is all they are asking is that stop treating the American citizens. By the way, a recent Pew survey found that 2 in 3 Americans believe that we are not alone in the universe.
Right.
And we want answers. We just want the truth. Don't lie to us. This act would require the government to not keep secret what they know about the possibility that what we are seeing are not, in fact, earthly made vehicles. And because the defense contractors, real quick, the defense contractors who have all the money invested, especially in this reverse engineering, they control the purse strings and they lobby. And there are a handful of congressmen who will not let this bill, the UAP Disclosure Act, it had some momentum back in about 2022, but it has since stalled. Donald Trump has said he would sign it, but we need it to get to his desk.
I was going to say, but it's not even getting to him.
It's not even getting to him. I talked to Dan Farah about whether or not he's convinced, after putting this documentary together, and this has been a passion project for years for him. There are some things he can't even tell us. But he is absolutely convinced.
If the whole thing is about making sure everyone knows everything, how is he saying there's
some of it's
things
classified.
he can't tell?
Some of it's classified. I have a 20-minute conversation with him. It's going to be on Fox Local. We just need to edit it, and I encourage you to watch it because it's a fascinating conversation. But he is convinced, after everyone that he's spoken to, that not only are we not alone, there are multiple civilizations that have been here. That our universe is a shared neighborhood, for lack of a better term, and he's absolutely convinced of it. And one more thing, he believes that by virtue of this film, The Age of Disclosure, he believes that at some point a sitting president will stand at a podium and tell the American people, we are not alone in the universe.
And does he say how long he thinks before we get to that
That's
point?
the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
So he has not said that, but he believes it will happen sooner rather than later.
Very interesting. Now, did having the conversation with him change anything for you?
For me personally, and I told him this, I go back to, Kaplan and I, Mike Kaplan from Good Day Chicago, we would have these great debates on GDC on
You
the air,
having a debate with Mike Kaplan?
Yeah, he's Mr. It's a trick of the light. No, you don't know what you're talking about. There's no aliens. We're alone in the universe.
Yeah.
And I've had this conversation with so many people, even learned individuals, who were so quick to dismiss me. And I would joke with people, I'm a card-carrying member of the Royal Order of Tinfoil Hats. And for me, I'm watching this film, Anita, and I'm thinking to myself, at the very least, this documentary puts to rest the notion that we're crazy. That those of us who believe, because I've always found it arrogant to think, you really think that with trillions of galaxies that we're the only ones?
We're the chosen, yeah.
Right. And I get why it would be a secret, because can you imagine the impact psychologically, sociology, even theologically, if somebody knew for an absolute fact that we are not the sole beings in the universe?
Yeah.
That would shake us to our core.
Well, and I guess that's a part of the argument in terms, I'm sure over the years has been a part of the argument not to release. Like how much can the American public take?
Right.
Before it kind of, shifts quite a bit.
Right, and going back to 1947 when they created the CIA, part of the reason that it is believed by some that they did so was because you can't, part of the legacy program is under the guise of the CIA, the Department of Energy, and defense contractors. Part of the reason that they didn't tell the public then was because what were you going to say, Anita? Yes, we found aliens. Yes, their technology is better than ours. There's nothing we can do. We're helpless.
Yeah.
Do you really want to tell the American public that there's somebody out there that could enslave us at any time, take us over, and there's nothing we can do?
Well, and then there's another aspect of it that goes into national security as well. In terms of how much you can say, especially if it ties back to something else. You know, what are the risks for national security that may prevent it from being released?
Well, and all I can say is, if you get a chance to see the film, and again, it is streaming, thank goodness for whistleblowers. If we didn't have whistleblowers, we would not have this film. We would not have the information that we have. And it is overwhelming. I know you and I, we are in a truth-based, a fact-based business. And a lot of this, you could say, oh, it's circumstantial. But when, in one instance, an investigator went to a base, when 10 people are interviewed and they all describe the same thing, we have to assume that that's pretty credible.
Well, Scott Schneider, thank you for sharing your passion with us. Quite clearly your passion.
I am.
And I know that people are going to go see this film, but definitely go to Fox Local so you can check out this interview. It's always good to see like the makings of a film, you know, the mind behind it, how the science came together. So thank you so much for coming upstairs. Come back anytime.
I will. Thanks.
All right, we'll see you at 4 o'clock. Everybody, it's 2:58. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. It is our last hour here together for this Tuesday on Chicago Live. Let me tell you a little bit about what we have working for you. We're going to bring up our chief meteorologist just as soon as we can to talk about this ever-changing weather outside. We know so many of you have put together your travel plans, and now you're looking like, wait, what is going on out there? I mean, even as we have been online during this time since 1 o'clock, I've been looking out the window that's right in front of me like, oh yeah, things are a-changing. So we will definitely bring her up to talk about that as we get ready for a lot of holiday travel. But on that note of holiday travel, kind of surprising to hear about gas prices going down this week. Let's go ahead and bring in Patrick DeHaan, the head of petroleum analysis for Gas Buddy. Thank you so much for your time.
Hey, great to be with you, Nita.
So, you know, like I said, we focus a lot on the weather as we get ready for travel. But I would not have expected when we check on the gas that it's actually the lowest prices since 2021.
Yeah, the temperature is going to be going down in the air, and I'm sure the meteorologist can tell you all about that. It's also going down at the pump, as you talk about. Gas prices in Chicago averaging about $3.40 a gallon as I look at our live data. Now, that's only 2 cents lower than last week, but get ready for more of this. The BP refinery in Northwest Indiana that had a fire about a month ago just got back online here within the last week and a half or so. And as millions of Americans prepare to hit the road for Thanksgiving, gas prices are starting to noticeably decline here in the Great Lakes with that refinery back online. So certainly good news, though. Chicago is one of the fewer areas across the country. Gas prices are up 6 cents from last year, but the national average also up right now about a penny from a year ago. But look for a lot lower prices here in the weeks ahead.
Very interesting, and I'm sure welcome news for so many people who are getting ready to hit the highways. What are some other things that you're noticing right now?
Well, you know, overall, some of the biggest declines are happening right here in the Great Lakes with the return of that refinery in Northwest Indiana. In fact, Ohio, the statewide average is down over 20 cents a gallon in the last week. So if you're going out for Thanksgiving, don't be in a rush to fill that tank up if you don't have to be. Gas prices will actively be going down in much of the Great Lakes region over the long weekend. Now, if you're traveling away from Chicago, we have a lot of border communities here. Northwest Indiana and Southeast Wisconsin tend to be much cheaper. In fact, if you're going into Wisconsin, you probably won't realize what kind of gas prices are ahead of you. You're going to see a lot of prices in the 270s and 280s in Wisconsin. I know, rather incredible, right? Northwest Indiana, maybe closer to $3, but virtually all around Chicago, even downstate, you'll probably start to see more prices below $3.
What are some problematic areas that you're seeing?
Well, right now, if you look at that map behind my shoulder, you'll see that the West Coast is beat red. That means that they are paying the most in the country. Now, California does have very high gasoline taxes and regulations. California's average today, $4.65 a gallon. So if you thought we had it bad here in Chicago at $3.40, you know, hopefully you're not jumping on a plane going out to the West Coast. Along with Oregon and Washington, there's been a pipeline outage in Washington state, not impacting prices so much, but the West Coast really seeing some of the highest prices in the country.
What is driving the drops that we're seeing? More than, I know you mentioned the refinery. What are some other factors there?
Well, the good news, which will eventually deliver lower gas prices in Chicagoland across the next few weeks, has to do with oil prices. Oil recently touched its lowest level since 2021. Now, part of that is potentially due to some optimism surrounding Russia, Ukraine. Now, I don't think there's going to be much of a peace deal there. Russia has not given us much confidence, but it's still pushing oil lower. Why? Well, Russia's a major oil producer. So if there's a resolution to that situation, you're going to see downward pressure on oil. But the big story really, which much of the national average, which should be lower today than last year, has to do with OPEC. OPEC, of course, the consortium of oil producing countries. They've been raising output on a near monthly basis for most of this year. So that's been adding supply to the global market, which has pushed prices for oil down to those multi-year lows.
Very interesting stuff here. And then, of course, we're getting into our colder months. So are we switching like the blend?
Yeah, you know, we made that transition here, although progressively as we move to the colder weather, we do kind of continue to see that that winter blend. Now there are different blends depending on what time of year. Now we are on kind of the least stringent type of gasoline, and we're going to stick with that until about January, early February. That's, by the way, when prices will eventually start going back up. But yeah, great question. The other thing is, while a lot of Americans are hitting the road for Thanksgiving, keep in mind, a lot of us are staying where we're ending up going, whether it's to grandma's house, friends and family. A lot of Americans park for several days over the course of the week. So gasoline demand during the week of Thanksgiving is actually a bit lower than the week before and the week after Thanksgiving. A lot of Americans think that, hey, everyone's hitting on the road on Wednesday. Gasoline demand's got to be through the roof. But really, a lot of us take a lot of downtime to enjoy this time of year.
Yeah. So what are your best tips right now for folks?
Well, for those who are venturing beyond the state lines, again, like I said, Wisconsin, Indiana, even down to Missouri, all of these areas outside of Chicagoland are going to have lower prices. Even if you're going just to areas like Peoria or Springfield, you'll notice a big dip in prices. So always shop around. Apps like Gas Buddy and Google Maps and Waze can all show you prices. But the other thing too to think about is loyalty programs. You hear about them, you see about them, but a lot of loyalty programs now also, if you're a free member, will roll your price back by anywhere from 5 to 10 cents a gallon. And again, if you're on the road for longer periods of time, use that cruise control, right? It can save you a lot of fuel efficiency by holding your speed steady over the course of several hours. And if you're a pack rat that likes to take kitty litter and dog food wherever you may be going, keep in mind all the extra weight, every 100 pounds of extra weight in your car is going to reduce your fuel efficiency by 1 to 2 miles a gallon. So get rid of that dead weight. Drive safely, but certainly great news when it comes to gas prices.
Mm-hmm. And are there some political pressures that may drive gas prices one way or another, or any type of conflicts that could drive gas prices one way or another in the next month or two?
Not a whole lot that comes to mind. Like I said, we continue to watch Russia and Ukraine. Now, there's a lot of noise on gas prices from politicians on both sides saying that they're either higher or lower. The truth is usually somewhere in beneath or in the middle, I should say, and that's where gas prices are now. About 25 states are currently seeing prices lower than last year, whereas 25, including Illinois, are slightly higher than last year. But get this, 40 out of the nation's 50 states have seen gas prices decline in the last week. And I always love to try and end this myth. Gas prices don't always go up for holidays. This time around, 40 out of 50 states seeing big declines going into Thanksgiving.
Okay, and any trends that you can see into 2026?
Well, I think 2026 is going to be another relatively affordable year. Probably it's going to feel a lot like this year. You're going to see some sub $3 prices. Yes, even in Chicagoland over the next couple of months. Those sub $3 prices will probably start disappearing in mid to late February. Then we'll be back in the mid $3 a gallon range for next summer, as we tend to see higher prices in the summer when demand is higher.
Okay, thank you so much, Patrick DeHaan, head of petroleum analysis for Gas Buddy. Happy Thanksgiving to you. Appreciate your time.
Thanks to you as well.
Yeah, 3:09 right now. We'll be right back.
Four.
3:12 right now, and one of the biggest stories this week thus far has been an update to the Slender Man case that takes us back to 2014. And so as we have been kind of tracking things just this week with a young woman who was involved in that case, one of the suspects who was released to a group home just a couple months ago and got out and was just caught in our area in Chicagoland, in the suburbs. Want to go ahead and bring in someone who deals with true crime on a regular basis, so we can kind of fill in the gaps here of this case that's been going on for so long. Alice LaCour, she is the host of the Prosecutors Podcast from Podcast One. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, so when did you start following the Slender Man case?
I think it gripped the nation in 2014 when two 12-year-old girls were guilty of trying to murder their best friend, 19 stabs. This was a story that I think gripped everyone's attention. We've been covering this case and following it because one of those girls, the one who actually did the stabbing, recently petitioned for conditional release and was granted.
Yeah, and it's pretty wild because she was sentenced to 40 years, and again, we haven't even had 20 years at this point, that she gets this conditional release sent to a group home, and it didn't even take half a year for her to get out of that place. So take me back in your following the case. What were some areas that, aside from what has just happened, that kind of shocked you along the way, or that made you wonder what's behind what happened?
This is an incredibly unusual case. First of all, the perpetrator, the would-be murderer, was only 12 years old at the time. And she did plead guilty to what was charged, first-degree homicide, but it was a little bit strange, not what we're used to seeing. She pled guilty, not guilty, by way of mental defect. In other words, she wasn't going to be sent to your regular prison. She was going to be sent to a mental institution for 40 years. Now, that is no walk in the park whatsoever. It meant that prosecutors and the judge recognized she was a danger to herself, to society, and she needed to be watched. And so that 40 years was supposed to make her get better over time. And as she made progress, there are options within the law to allow her to go to a group home where she ultimately was conditionally released to. As you mentioned, she was released, really, it's been, just a little over 10 years since the stabbing, the attempted homicide. And she was officially let out just in September. Within a couple months, she's already cut off her ankle bracelet and absconded to 165 miles away. This is obviously not great to show that she is ready for being released from the mental institution.
Yeah, and when you go back to, there's so much of this that kind of makes you question a lot of things in the legal system, in the judicial system. But even with this, so as I understand it, as a part of her sentence, okay, it could be reevaluated every 6 months. So at what point, why this time was it that they thought, okay, no, she can go to a group home? What were the signs that said maybe she's made enough improvement to go to this group home?
You raise a fantastic point. The judicial system is always in tension. You're wanting to both rehabilitate, get dangerous people off the street, but hopefully make sure that they then get better and become contributing members of society. When you have someone who then also has a mental issue that needs to be dealt with, a medical issue that needs to be dealt with, you want them to get better. This is such a tough situation because obviously when Morgan was first committed, she was only 12 years old. Spending her entire life in a mental institution is not great for society. And so the goal, of course, is to get her better. But you said, what are the signs that made people think, well, now is the time for her conditional release? To be fair, the prosecutors noted that they did not think she was ready to be released. They noted that she had concerning behavior, that she seemed to be able to attract men in particular who were unsavory characters, who were able to pull her in directions that were not good for her. And in fact, when Morgan was found, it appears that she stowed away with a much older man. This is obviously a developing situation. We don't know much about the person that she absconded with, but the concerns that the prosecutor noted at the time the judicial system was evaluating whether she was ready for release is coming to bear. It appears that, in fact, she is not ready for prime time. And remember, she's a young 23, 24-year-old young woman. There's still a lot of life left. And if we can get her to a place where she can be a contributing member, it would be better for everyone all around.
Yeah, and I guess it goes back to also, how do you evaluate a juvenile's mental state in a case like this? Obviously, we know, I'm sure they had some legal experts or some, a physician to come in, a medical expert to come in and talk about like the development of a child's brain. So how do you evaluate a juvenile's mental state?
Yeah, there were a lot of medical experts in this case. You absolutely get evaluated, and her mental competence and the state of her mental stability was at issue from the very beginning. In fact, before she was even allowed to plead guilty, allowed to be convicted of this crime, first, the judge actually ruled that she was not competent to stand trial. And it took some time for doctors to treat her before she was even in a state to be able to be charged and then convicted with this crime. Doctors are here the entire way because obviously the judicial system doesn't have medical expertise. The mental institution she was at had doctors the entire time who were treating her. And I believe some of these concerns actually were documented in terms of her inability to be on her own at this time for her own safety and for others.
Yeah, and the man that she was with, I was just trying to go back in our notes here, Chad Mecca, in his 40s. Now, the reporter there in Wisconsin that we spoke to yesterday talked about the fact that she's found with a man in his 40s. There was a gas station, convenience store worker who saw them sleeping outside, said, that looks a little odd. Let me call the police. Turns out, they approached him and she's like, I did something really bad. I don't want to tell you my name. They do fingerprints, figure out who it is. But so she's found with this 40-some-odd-year-old man. There was also a 40-some-odd-year-old man she had been having contact with inside of the facility. So then there's a question, which we still don't know yet, whether it's the same person. Did this person coax her out of the facility, kind of coach her how to escape? There are a lot of questions as to how it even went down.
Yeah, there are a lot of questions here, and I think you're right. There was some concerning messages. She was trading with a much older man when she was in the facility. I don't think it's public yet whether this is the same man, but those conversations with that individual, that man, when she was still in the facility, I think, it touched upon sale of organs and illegal behavior, and very, very concerning behavior. I think what we're seeing here is that she's a young girl who has spent the bulk of her life, her teenage years and her early adulthood, all within essentially a safe space. She has not had to live on her own. You can see how she's a very vulnerable person, especially to someone who's maybe 20 years her senior, who may not have her best interest at heart. This is a situation where everyone in the system should be looking out for her. I know she's the one who's absconded, and she is the one who committed a horrendous crime here. But what I see here is a very vulnerable young woman who needs protection both for herself and for others.
Yeah, there's so many different layers to this, so do we know whether this Chad Mecca is facing charges?
I'm pretty sure that he was detained for a little bit and quickly released. If he doesn't have a criminal record or he doesn't have a warrant out, police can't hold him. I believe he may have been slapped with some minor charge like obstruction of justice in terms of giving identity. But I promise you, they're looking into him. There will probably be charges coming. But my understanding is right now they don't have enough. And when you don't have a warrant because of your constitutional rights, he can't be held until some further time. But I don't think it's going to be the last that we hear of Chad being in this system because something is amiss. And as they investigate, there will likely be enough for a warrant for additional charges.
Yeah, they're definitely still fleshing out quite a bit of this. And you're right, providing a fake name to police and also criminal trespassing for being there on that property there where the worker found them. So let's talk about how an alleged escape, I mean, it's not really alleged, I mean, she did escape from the facility, how an escape would factor into the charges she was already facing.
So what this affects isn't the original charge. It affects her sentence in the sense that she was about to get out on conditional release, obviously short of the original sentence to 40 years. I would be surprised if any judge would continue to allow this conditional release after she's cut off an ankle monitor and then absconded 165 miles away. I think what really happens is she goes right back to serve the rest of her sentence for who knows how long. This affects her ability to cut short that sentence. Whether prosecutors bring additional charges will be another matter. If they bring additional charges, obviously there can be additional sentences that come. But because she got such a long sentence in the first instance, I think realistically what we'll see is the conditional release to the group home will be revoked and she'll go back in and continue serving that 40-year sentence. And I don't think she's going to be let out anytime soon.
Yeah, let's go back to the original case. What happened to the young woman who was the victim in this case?
This is truly a devastating case. The victim in this case, she was just 12 years old. She was best friends with Morgan. They did everything together. They had sleepovers, and there was a third girl who joined their group when they were about 12 years old, and the three of them became thick as thieves. They were best friends. They did everything together. But then something changed because Anissa, who was that third friend, introduced Morgan to this online meme, Slender Man. And Morgan became obsessed with Slender Man. They did not speak to anyone. There was no one pretending to be Slender Man. For those of you who may not be familiar, Slender Man is a made-up character. It was for an art contest. This creator quite literally created these photographs and came up with this urban legend of Slender Man. And it's this faceless, tall man who is kind of always behind young children. And the urban legend is people disappear around him, especially children. Well, Morgan, who, as we now know, was suffering from different mental illnesses already at that young age. She latched on to this idea of Slender Man, and she became fixated on the fact that she had to kill her best friend, Morgan, in order to appease this Slender Man. And if she didn't kill her best friend, then Slender Man would come and kill her entire family. And so she and her other friend planned to kill their best friend. And the planning went on for months. And ultimately what happened was at a birthday party, the three of them were together. It was a sleepover. She was planning on killing her that night, but couldn't work up the courage. And so the next morning, the three girls went to a local park. They played, and Morgan brought a knife with her to the park. And they ultimately went into the bathroom at the park, where she ended up stabbing her friend 19 times, leaving her for dead. It's quite a miracle that her friend didn't die. The doctor said that the blade was within, a millimeter of an aortic valve that would have absolutely killed her instantly. And Peyton actually was able to crawl to the street and found help and survived the attack.
It's horrific. It really is horrific. Just to even think about someone enduring something like that. And so has she made a full recovery? Do we know?
Completely understandably, the victim doesn't speak about this publicly almost ever. I can't even imagine surviving something like this. These were the two girls that she trusted everything with, her best friends, who quite literally turned on her and tried to kill her. I think physically she has recovered, but I don't understand how anyone would be able to emotionally and psychologically come back from this. But I do think she is living her life the best way that she can.
Yeah. And then the other young woman, was she charged with anything?
So she was also charged with first-degree homicide. She went to trial and was also found not guilty by reason of mental defect. Again, this just means she doesn't go to a regular prison, but she was committed to a mental institution as well. Now, she had a much smaller sentence. I think it was around 25 years or so, and she was granted release about 3 or 4 years ago. So just like Morgan, she was granted a conditional release, but then we never heard from her again, which is exactly what you hope for. You hope that you're released and then you are able to reintegrate into a regular life.
Have we heard of any other cases tied to this Slender Man?
No. I mean, like I said earlier, Slender Man is a created fictional character.
Right.
No one online even pretended it was real. And so that's why the fixation by Morgan and her friend were so bizarre, because it's not as if there was a movie made about it and everyone thought it was real. You know, it wasn't like the Blair Witch Project where people thought it was real and then they realized it was just an urban legend. This is a case that stands alone for so many reasons.
Wow. Okay, so we know that today Morgan Geyser was in court. She waived her extradition, so she'll be headed back to Wisconsin, and now we just wait to see what happens next, whether she, as you mentioned, will go back to the hospital setting that she was in before, or whether she'll go back to this group home, which it would just be pretty wild if that were to happen after getting out so quickly. And then also waiting to find out who this man, actually Chad Mecca, was to her and what took place. So as I was listening to the reporter that we talked to yesterday, he said that after she escaped from the group home, she took a Greyhound bus, and I'm not sure at what point in time she met up with this Chad guy, but that she took a Greyhound bus here to our area, and then they walked to the suburbs. I mean, it's just, there's so many, this case was just inconceivable from the beginning, but it's just taken so many different twists.
It truly has taken so many twists. I will say the one silver lining around all of this is that Morgan was taken into custody without incident. This could have been a very bad situation. No one, was hurt in that process, thank goodness. I know that her attorney has already come out and said, you see, she's not violent. Nobody was hurt during it. But truly, that was absolutely fantastic luck that no civilians and Morgan was not hurt during this process. But I do hope she gets the help that she needs, because clearly something is not right.
Yeah, a couple of things, and I will let you go. I know that there are some questions also about why the young woman who was the victim in the original case, why she wasn't initially notified that Morgan had gotten out of that facility. I know that was also coming up. Have we ever heard from Morgan's family, her parents, anyone in her family?
I haven't really seen much about them being in the public. And again, I can understand why. It must be very devastating for the family as well. What we do know is that the judicial system, people think that there are immediate alarms when things happen. They don't happen, especially with respect to victims' rights. It depends on someone picking up a phone to let the victim know if someone has gotten out or is being released. Even the local police department didn't know that there was a warrant out for Morgan's arrest. This is just a reminder that when people pick up the phone and call the police and report things, it actually helps.
It matters.
These situations.
It really does, yeah. So tell us just about your podcast, and I'll let you go.
Oh, thank you so much for asking. So I'm a practicing attorney. I was a prosecutor for many years, loved my job, and thought that maybe the world would like to know a little bit from a prosecutor's perspective, all these interesting true crime cases. And so my co-host Brett and I, we were both prosecutors, and we host the Prosecutors Podcast, where we cover cases like Slender Man, the Slender Man murder or attempted murders. And we try to explain what's happening in these investigations and what's happening so that people who listen to true crime understand the judicial system and kind of civics around them.
Well, we certainly appreciate you sharing your expertise with us today, and we hope that you'll come back. There are obviously so many cases, unfortunately, for us to talk about. But thank you so much for joining us today, and happy Thanksgiving to you.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to you as well.
All right, you take care. 3:32, everyone. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. It's 3:35 right now. Recently, there was a Campbell Soup executive who was secretly recorded during a meeting, and a lawsuit has now been filed in Michigan's Wayne County Circuit Court, accusing that executive of making disparaging comments regarding the company's customers and employees. I want to go ahead and bring in Steven Galanis, who is an employment law attorney, to talk a little bit more about this situation that Campbell Soup has found themselves in. Thank you so much for your time. I think you're on mute right now.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. So this is in employment law what we call a retaliation lawsuit, and the plaintiff is alleging that they were terminated in retaliation for reporting alleged race discrimination. The background is that the employee recorded a conversation with an executive during which the executive allegedly made disparaging comments, race-based, about employees of Indian origin. And subsequently, the plaintiff disclosed and reported that conversation to management, and allegedly then he was terminated 20 days later. So he's claiming retaliation, that he was terminated in retaliation for his protected activity of reporting and opposing alleged employment discrimination on the basis of race. So the law of retaliation, it's a little tricky, but there are three basic elements. It's the plaintiff's burden of proof to establish three things: that the plaintiff engaged in protected activity, which we'll come back to in a second, that the plaintiff was the victim of an adverse employment action, such as a termination. And thirdly, and this is the big one, that a causal connection between the protected activity and the adverse employment action. So when we talk about protected activity, that's simply an employee's act of opposing what the employee reasonably and in good faith believes to be an unlawful employment practice, which can be one of many things: employment discrimination based on a whole host of protected classifications, retaliation itself, harassment based on a host of various protected classifications, sexual harassment, wage violations, so on and so forth. So here the protected activity, what was his report and his opposition to the alleged race discrimination.
Yeah.
The key to all these cases is the plaintiff must establish a causal connection between the two. And that's where the timing comes in, the timing between the alleged protected activity and the adverse employment action. So typically in retaliation cases, the plaintiff's primary evidence, not their only evidence, but their primary evidence is close temporal proximity between the protected activity and the adverse employment action. Here, allegedly, it was 20 days, which would be considered close temporal proximity. And the courts generally have held, and particularly in our jurisdiction, it's a Michigan case, but in our jurisdiction here in Illinois, the federal courts have consistently held that when there is close temporal proximity between the protected activity and the adverse employment action, coupled with some other suspicious circumstances, that will raise an inference of retaliation. Now, that doesn't mean the plaintiff wins the case outright. That just means the plaintiff has met their burden, to establish a case. Then from there, it goes through the legal process, and ultimately, the question is what the employer's actual subjective motivation was for the termination decision. That gets into a myriad of other evidence regarding the termination decision, the basis for it, and other suspicious circumstances surrounding the termination. When it comes to employment law, it's frequently all about the suspicious circumstances surrounding the employment decision in question, whether it's a termination or a demotion or some other adverse employment action. The courts even use the phrase fishy in their legal opinions. The courts talk about fishy circumstances, and the fishier the circumstances are, the greater the chances are that the plaintiff will prevail.
Yeah,
So,
when you speak of fishy circumstances, just reading over the alleged conversation that was recorded, it says we have stuff. I'm sanitizing it here. We have stuff for poor people. Who buys our stuff? I don't buy Campbell's products barely anymore. This, again, the voice allegedly belonging to this executive. Bioengineered meat. I don't want to eat a piece of chicken that came from a 3D printer. Again, allegedly from this executive. What's different between what you're describing and, say, a whistleblower complaint?
well, whistleblower is very similar, but let me point out that there's another alleged statement that's part of that recording, and that's that the person being recorded allegedly made race-based disparaging
Oh, let me go
statements.
further down. Yes, you are correct.
Yeah.
So he also allegedly made derogatory comments about Indian coworkers, according to the recording, claimed he sometimes came to work under the influence of marijuana. He said an expletive, that they don't know anything, that they couldn't think for themselves. Again, speaking of the Indian community. So, yeah, there are several different aspects to this.
Absolutely. But for purposes of the retaliation claim, nuts and bolts, it's the alleged race-based disparaging derogatory comments about the employees of Indian origin. That's the key, because the plaintiffs reporting of those alleged comments, that's the alleged protected activity.
So would the company have grounds? I mean, let's take, if we took out the race aspect of it, if we took that out, can someone just record their boss secretly? Is that okay? Or would this be a complaint regardless?
To have a valid retaliation claim, the plaintiff must have opposed an unlawful employment practice. So if you remove the alleged unlawful employment practice, which would be the employment discrimination in connection with the alleged statement about the Indian employees, it would be a different story. As far as secretly recording a conversation with one's boss, that's the law there is going to depend on the state. Now here it was Michigan. I'm a Chicago attorney, but I took a look at Michigan law regarding what we call eavesdropping, and Michigan is what we call a one-party state. That means that in a conversation between two participants, one of those two participants may record the conversation without disclosing to the other participant that they're recording, without their consent. In two-party states, that's only permissible if the participant who's recording obtains the consent of the other participant. But here in Michigan, where it's a one-party consent state, that is permissible, and consequently the alleged recording itself could be admissible into evidence in a subsequent lawsuit.
Does it matter how long this man had been working for the company? Because it doesn't seem like he had been working for them for very long before this even happened.
Yeah, legally it doesn't matter. As a practical matter, when it comes to employment law, longevity counts. And when you have a plaintiff employee or a former employee plaintiff, who's worked there for decades, since Reagan was president, or since Carter was president, since Clinton was president, with that longevity coupled with a strong track record of strong performance reviews year after year, decade after decade, that's going to count as a practical matter, and that will lend tremendous support to the plaintiff's case. Whereas if you have an employee who was brand new, it's a different story. It's the opposite. If you have an employee who's only been employed for, say, 3 months, or 4 months, 90 days, and they're terminated, and then they come with a lawsuit. We don't have that track record of decades or at least years of service and loyalty. There's no track record of performance, which is always relevant. And as a practical matter, the sympathies aren't there because the employee wasn't there so long. When it's kind of mid-range, 1 to 5 years, say, it's going to be more or less neutral.
Mm-hmm. So what could the man, Mr. Garza, who filed this complaint, what could he be entitled to if the court finds that he was retaliated against?
The recoverable damages in a retaliatory discharge case under federal law, which is what we call Title VII, and also under Michigan state law, include a whole host of damages, and that includes lost wages and lost benefits, back pay, front pay, lost value of insurance benefits, lost value of retirement benefits, lost bonuses or incentive compensation. Those are all the so-called economic damages, but a prevailing plaintiff in a retaliatory discharge case is also entitled to recover compensatory damages for emotional distress, as well as punitive damages. Compensatory and punitive damages are capped under our federal law at $300,000 for the largest size companies with 500 or more employees, but there is no cap under Michigan law or under Illinois state law for that matter. So there's always the potentiality for a large punitive or compensatory award looming in every case.
Yeah.
And additionally, a plaintiff in these types of cases, if they prevail on some or all of the claims, can recover their reasonable attorney fees and litigation costs. And that's what we call attorney fee shifting. In employment law, it doesn't go both ways. It's unilateral. So if the plaintiff prevails, they can recover the court awarded their reasonable attorney fees and costs. How that works, this is way down the road after a trial. If there is a trial and the plaintiff wins, then after that, the plaintiff would file with the court what we call a fee petition, and that's a statement of all the attorneys' attorney fees in tenth of an hour or quarter hour increments from start to finish, which could cover years of litigation.
And so this could take years to be resolved?
Well, the vast majority of cases, employment and otherwise, settle at some point or other. It's only a minority of cases that don't settle, that go through the entire judicial process and actually go through a jury trial. But you never know.
Yeah.
But for those cases that never settle, that process takes a long time, depending on the jurisdiction. Easily, well, here in Chicago, in federal court, 2 to 3 years, not counting an appeal, with an appeal to the federal court, to the federal appeals court, 2 to 4 years. In our state court, even longer. So,
wow.
And that's one of the many reasons that the parties tend to settle at some point or other. Often it's before a lawsuit is filed, but even after a lawsuit is filed, the parties may settle at some juncture or other in the process before an actual trial.
Attorney Glickman, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. But again, back to the fee petition, if we go through the entire process, jury trial, plaintiff wins, then the plaintiff files with the court, the fee petition. The defendant, would file objections to it, and then it's the judge who determines and decides what amount of those fees are reasonable, and costs such as court reporter fees, expert witness fees, filing fees, and the judge makes a ruling and determines a specific award to the plaintiff for a specific amount of fees. It's never going to be 100 cents on the dollar, but it's after years of litigation, that could be a hefty amount.
Well, Attorney Glickman, we certainly appreciate you taking a few moments to kind of talk us through that. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you for having me. Have a great Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to you and yours as well. Thank you. And I do, before we go to break here, I want to let you know that Campbell Soup is on the record saying if the comments were in fact made, they are unacceptable. They do not reflect our values and the culture of our company. We are proud of the food we make, the people who make it, and the high quality ingredients we use. The comments heard on the recording about our food are not only inaccurate, they are patently absurd. The company says that it was not aware of the recording before the lawsuit was filed. Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back to close things out. All right, thanks so much, everyone, for spending your time with us today. Just kind of want to wrap things up here. We have covered a lot of ground during our time together since 1 o'clock. You just heard us talking about that Campbell Soup lawsuit. We also spoke about the big case with the Slender Man developments that have happened this week. We spoke with Scott Schneider about this much anticipated The Age of Disclosure, that documentary about UFOs that so many people have been waiting to see and find out what is revealed there. And we've also talked a little bit with the prosecutor's podcast about more of the cases that we're looking forward to. We went to a press conference as well where we heard about hidden cameras in a business in Batavia and what they are doing moving forward, the state representative that they were working with, as they try to make sure that no other families, no other young person, no other adult is violated in such a way in the future, that they go to a place and work with a person that they trust and have their trust violated in such a way. And we also brought in a union that's representing people who live in a South Shore building that was raided recently as a part of Operation Midway Blitz, but now has some representation to try to make sure that those folks who are living in really deplorable conditions may have a better place to go very soon. So plenty of conversations that we were able to have, and we thank all of our guests that we were able to bring in. Let's kind of take a look at our weather situation before we let you go here before the 4 o'clock news. And you can see today things have been great, but look what's ahead. All right, everyone, we're looking at a high wind alert right now. This is expiring at 9 p.m. tonight, so be aware that could get extended into tomorrow. We're also looking at major changes going into Wednesday and Thursday. Yes, we might have a dry Thanksgiving, but look at that, accumulating weekend snow. That's got to be on everyone's radar. But so take time today, like these folks here at the Bean, to enjoy the scene that we have out there. So many people getting in their pictures at the Bean. And if you look at the bottom side of your screen, you can see all of those people who are getting ready to go out onto the ice rink, or maybe just enjoying a meal outside right now, as we have pretty good weather sitting at 51 degrees for now, which will seem very hot by this time next week, as we're getting ready by Monday of next week to see 18 degrees as the high, everyone. And again, some accumulating snow in between. So be safe. We'll be back here with you tomorrow at 1 o'clock, and we'll be on the air again until 4 p.m. Thanks for tuning in.
Live from Chicago, this is Fox 32 News at 4.
Right now at 4, recent crimes reigniting a debate over electronic monitoring.
Congress is hearing the calls of mothers in need. The bill being introduced in response to a viral video of a woman forced from a hospital while in active labor.
Plus, pack your bags. Airports and roads are filling up as Americans look to get away for the Thanksgiving holiday. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Sylvia Perez.
I'm Scott Shining for Terrence, and weather is first at 4. Temps are falling.
Yeah, there's also a possibility of some snow tonight. As we take a live look outside at the Bean, lots of people out there. You still see those fall colors. And Emily, I was still pleasantly surprised when I was out this afternoon. It's not too bad yet, but that's about to change, huh?
That is about to change. So out there right now, we still have temperatures that are in the 50s, but we have so many different things to tell you about over the next 4 to 5 days or so that we're going to be dealing with. First and foremost, we have a cold front that's coming through tonight that's going to send temperatures tumbling tonight into tomorrow. We have scattered snow showers, and it's also going to get very windy. So the entire area now has a wind advisory that's going into effect at 3 a.m. That's going to last until 9 p.m. tomorrow for westerly winds as high as about 50 miles per hour. So we could occasionally have a couple damaging wind gusts that we need to look out for tomorrow. And of course, that could be impacting some air travel that we're going to have to watch out for as well, just because of how high those winds are going to be. And also with those scattered snow showers, then we're also going to be dealing with some reduced visibilities at times tomorrow too. And then this weekend, models are trending like we're going to be seeing accumulating snowfall, which could be creating additional travel issues for those of you that have travel plans Saturday and Sunday. Details coming up.
Well, flight delays and cancellations at Chicago airports at a minimum today. 230 delays reported.